Hey everyone, Mike here with Helm to Tower. We're going to be talking about Warframe today on the channel. That's right. It's a game I'm not knowledgeable about, but luckily two good friends of mine, Jarrett Green and Scott White, are more knowledgeable about it because they got to go to Tennocon recently and check out all the new announcements for Warframe, like Warframe 1999 and Soulframe as well. So I sat down with them, they reached out and wanted to talk about the stuff they saw, and we're going to talk about it. So without further ado, let's get into the chat. Scott White, Jarrett Green, hello friends, welcome to the channel. You both just came back from Tennocon, which is the whole big Warframe event that they hold every year. And was this both of your first Tennocons you've ever been to?
It was.
Yep.
Yeah.
Excellent.
My first trip outside of the States, actually.
Oh wow, nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Good old London, Ontario.
London, Ontario. So, I guess, they announced a bunch of stuff. I'm gonna be real. Like I said in the intro of this video, like I have no idea much about Warframe. You two came to me and were like, hey, we went to this and we have a lot to talk about and the things they announced and things they showed. So I'm curious to hear both from you. I guess, we can start. I know, Scott, I know you also have some limited Warframe knowledge as well. I think we're like in a similar camp of yes. Warframe unknowing. So I'm curious, just like what brought you to want to go to this event, and then also just wanted to get a general response from you first, because I know Jarrett actually has the most experience with Warframe, so I think he'll have a lot more thoughts. But I'm curious to hear from you first, Scott. Like, what were kind of your thoughts going to Tennocon for the first time?
Yeah, so the big draw for me with Tennocon was to see and get more information on Soulframe, which is they're touting as the sister project to Warframe, but it's set in a high fantasy world, brand new, not really connected as far as we know to anything Warframe related. It's much more of a slower paced game, but the fact that it doesn't have 10 years or 11 years at this point worth of lore and backstory to kind of fight through is what intrigued me. Plus, I've just always been much more drawn to the high fantasy or epic fantasy settings as opposed to science fiction. I still love science fiction, but I love high fantasy more. So the prospect of getting to see more of that, in addition to Warframe 1999, which is their big upcoming DLC, looks fun. Mm-hmm. But I was mostly going because I wanted to see and hear more about their brand new game, Soulframe. So that was what really drew me and made me want to use my PTO time at work to
go see it. That's cool. So I guess did they have a lot of that there, or was it more just like a hands-off kind of showcase of Soulframe? I don't really know where the state of that is, to be honest.
Still super early, all hands off. Hearing from other people, Jarrett's actually in the Prelude, which is like a closed pre-alpha build that all people that were at Tennocon actually can access now.
Oh, nice.
But it sounds like not tons of stuff was really revealed or new stuff was really shown regarding Soulframe, which sounds like a bummer. But for me, who saw the initial trailer and thought it was cool, a lot of it was still new to me, and it still looks fun. Like I'm anxious to dive into it when I get access to it. So got to see some new enemies, got to see a new ancestor, which serves as like your crafting gimmick. People you talk to, and just them stressing that Soulframe is not a Souls-like, even though it has soul in the name.
Yeah, it has soul in the name. Yeah, that's like a good distinction. Yeah, and I can totally relate to you of like, I always get the, on the channel, I cover a lot of kind of live games and other things like that. And I've recently covered even very adjacent live games with like First Descendant, and like even before that was Wayfinder, which that game is like spouted into its own weird different thing. But like that idea of like, I know I would probably like Warframe if I tried, and I've tried it, but it is just like, it's so daunting. So the idea of like Soulframe, like giving a similar experience potentially, but also being like a new like entry point that maybe like gives people a better feeling on that. Now, Jarrett Green, you're much more of a Warframe aficionado because you've definitely played a lot more than pretty much all of us here. So were you interested in Soulframe at all, or were you more excited to see like the new Warframe stuff here?
Soulframe was less of a mystery to me because I was in the preludes for a while now.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So I'm one of the people who like saw the new Soulframe announcement, and was like, this isn't much different than what you have right now.
Right.
But for someone who A, has zero access to it, and B, had maybe never seen anything from it besides that that one reveal trailer from, I don't know, the Game Awards, maybe. I don't remember how long ago it was.
I think it might have been last Tennocon, because they did
Maybe
mention that
you
a
might be
few
right.
times how they showed they got pushback that they showed too much Soulframe last year.
Which is funny considering there's not a whole lot to decipher between those two trailers. Like, what you can still like pretty confidently ask, what the hell is this, and
yeah,
and be justified.
Yeah, because it looks like kind of, from at least like my minor vibe check, having seen the very little bit of Soulframe I've seen, it seems like it is slower paced, like fantasy, like Scott said, but like in terms of gameplay, it looks much slower paced than Warframe does, and I'll be curious to see if that is like appealing, because I feel like one of the big appeals of Warframe to some people is that you are like zooming through these maps and you have this like mobility aspect to it, right? At least that's what I usually hear.
I think it's part of it. Warframe is one of those games that like it barely resembles a game it was 10 years ago.
Right.
I was comparing it to a lot of people at Tennocon as like, it's really Final Fantasy 14-ish. Like the first half of that game is very A Realm Reborn, where like you find yourself telling people you just got to get through it to get to like the good stuff.
Good stuff, sure, yeah.
And there's like no way around it, so like you kind of have to do it.
Right.
Things like, even, I mean, 1999 is like such a different thing, but the past couple years of Warframe have been a lot of them trying stuff and doing very different weird things, focusing on like single player, more narrative focus, more like sharper design focus as far as like these little single player experience like expansions are concerned, like really making a third person shooter like every 18 months inside this bigger sort of multiplayer third person shooter. So it's like once you get to the story content that is so important to something like Warframe 1999, the real consequential stuff, you start seeing the change in this game that people kind of really fall into. It's just unfortunate that like a lot of those people had kind of gotten through the early stuff already and were kind of just waiting around for something new, and then something new came and it kind of brought them back in. It's hard to tell someone who was at zero to like, don't worry, man, it gets good in 30 hours.
yeah, that's like a similar struggle, like, you know, having played First Descendant recently, and that is obviously being very much compared to Warframe right now. And honestly, that is very much there, where I really did not like a lot of that game going through like the main story stuff, because it feels like very bland. The story is very bad, but then you get to like the end game stuff, and it's like, oh, now I have kind of control over like what I can actually do moment to moment. I can kind of like do more interesting things and kind of chase what I want to chase in terms of like a looter shooter kind of thing, and that made a much more interesting game. So I'm sure there's like I would have that moment with Warframe if I was actually able to put that kind of time into it. And
I would think yes.
For sure.
I think that like there's something about the setting of Warframe, I think, was always like the first thing that captured me. I'm kind of the opposite of Scott. I'm very much more into sci-fi than I am into like high fantasy. But even then, like Warframe is more like a sci-fi novel than it is like a sci-fi video game, and that the setting is so weird that like you wouldn't find it in a movie, you wouldn't find it in a game, because games and movies kind of keep it safe when it comes to like sci-fi, even lots of TV shows where it's like a versions of like zombie apocalypse version of this is not Star Wars, but like you get it, or like a lot of not Star Treks running around. This is like more like Dune the novel, where things are like very weird. And it takes it very seriously.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because I just, that's always been that struggle, and I also keep up with a lot of other like live games. So that's like a big thing too, where it's just like trying to divide the time from like Destiny to now playing First Ascendant, and now I'm becoming a gacha sicko playing Zenless, and like those have all been like fun. They've been like capturing me in really cool ways, but I always see games like Warframe or games like Final Fantasy 14 and are always like, man, I know I'd like those, and like I've even dabbled with both of them in some small ways. It's hard to get off the things you already play. But besides all that, you like I think you both mentioned now that there was Soulframe was there to smaller capacity, but obviously it seems like Warframe was the much bigger thing. It had a lot more stuff there. Like Warframe, what was it, 1999 is kind of the big, I guess like their equivalent to like a big expansion release that's coming.
Yes.
Is that coming this year? Is that later this year?
Winter 2024.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because I saw a little bit about it. I mostly got it through like the social media osmosis of like, okay, yeah, they're looks like you're gonna be romancing robots or something like that. That was like kind of the big thing I saw people talking about. I don't really know how you both feel about that, but feel free to
The basic synopsis. I don't know what you know about Warframe, like lore wise.
Not lore wise, not really much at all.
Warframe, the modern origin system, the present day in Warframe takes place in a future so far from ours, in our solar system, but
okay.
in a future so far from ours that they don't even bother to mention how far. Like
right.
Humans were here at some point is the only real thing that connects us to this present in Warframe.
Mm-hmm.
Between our time and the present time existed a civilization called the Orokin that kind of ruined everything for everyone. So the present solar system is now being torn apart by several factions, kind of all sort of byproducts of Orokin destruction, including the Tenno, who is who you play, which is like a group of like wandering soldiers, basically. There's a recurring villain named Albrecht Entrati, who was a doctor, scientist of the Orokin, one of the last surviving ones and like the weirdest one. He found a way to like use powers from the void, which is like an extra dimensional space, to travel through time. And he's been missing ever since. Turns out we might have found him in 1999.
Ben Starr might have found him.
Oh snap!
Yeah, he has been haunting the present from the past in 1999. The 1999 he's living in is not like our 1999, but it's close.
Okay.
It's like the Upside Down in Stranger Things, but 1999.
Okay, it's like
so like the computers look right, but they're not. But the text is weird. Like the malls look like malls, but like not really. And the sounds and the feelings and then like the aesthetic is right, but like off. Which is where things like the boy band comes in. Like there's pop music, there's like grunge music, all period appropriate, but like from bands that aren't real. Okay. Except the one Nine Inch Nails song that is definitely a Nine Inch Nails song. And they, in this 1999, in this city called Holvania, they are like hurtling to the end of what seems to be an apocalypse that might be coinciding with like Y2K. And the 6 characters you meet here seem to be aligned in a struggle to stop it. And that's where characters like Ben Starr's character comes in. Arthur is the leader of these 6 sort of last heroes of Holvania.
Okay.
To stop Entrati from whatever he's doing.
Yeah. And are these like still like the people who are like, are these like 1999 like past like people who control these like suits? Because I know like the frames are like suits or something.
They are called proto frames, which suggests that they were maybe like the earliest versions of these warframes.
Okay, sure.
Visually, they kind of speak to, I don't know if you've played or seen Dark Sector.
Yeah.
Which was a DE game from like 2002 or something.
Yeah, I played that years and years ago. I remember that game. Yeah.
That that is often considered like the earliest point in the Warframe timeline, because there is a direct sort of link between that weird suit you're wearing in that game and the glaive you're throwing and
Warframe,
what becomes a Warframe.
Okay. Yeah.
So they are, and in fact, it's so explicit that like they tell you who these people are supposed to be. Warframe. Arthur is the Excalibur Warframe.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Aoi is Nyx, et cetera, et cetera. How that like the real connection between the past and the present is like hasn't been really linked yet, but lots of speculation.
Okay. Yeah, that seems like a big. I guess that'll be like the big mystery to like discover in the expansion and stuff. Interesting. Yeah, that sounds neat because like I definitely got the vibe of like they wanted to have that kind of more realistic looking, like I guess real world environment. Not really saying full on realistic, but like also having like the Warframe touch of like here are these weird skin robot suits going up running around at the same time. So like I think they kind of meshed that well, at least even from like an outsider. I saw some of like the footage and was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And like you're driving around like a motorcycle, like you're in freaking Matrix and stuff. So like
it's extremely Matrix.
So definitely got the vibe.
Or Tomocycle.
Yeah.
The cycle that you can jump and like ride up walls
and things to explode them.
Throw at things.
That was cool.
It's very Matrix. It's very Metal Gear. Like normal people, but like weird.
Yeah,
just like everything
weird,
in Metal Gear.
That weird twist. Yeah, that's cool. I guess so like none of this stuff like that's always one other thing, but I don't know. Like I think it could be something that like some people aren't into, but I think some people like this aspect. Like you like briefly mentioned, Jarrett, where like each kind of Warframe update for the past couple of years has been its own kind of branch to like the larger game. And like I know like I've heard people mention that like sometimes a lot of the stuff in there is interesting, but it really doesn't feed back into that like sort of core game.
A lot of content islands, they call them, I think.
Yeah, content islands. So like that's kind of the vibe I still got from this, because like I was like, all right, I saw like the motorcycle going around and like that all looks cool, but like I don't know if you'd be bringing that motorcycle back into like old Warframe or do other things. Okay,
I think it's like so there are mounts in the game that you can kind of bounce like a Warframe has a mount as part of its ability, but you can get like a jetpack thing that lets you fly around the open world stuff. There's a hoverboard that you can do tricks with and shit that becomes vehicles that you can kind of ride around the open world places. This seems like something that you'll be able to use in that capacity at least. But I mean, there have been a lot of things that you can that you get and then never use a lot of. Railjacks were like infamously that for a long time.
Were those the grappling hooks people were that like are
Railjacks are the big ship.
Oh, that you could
he uses to shoot through this. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
You really don't ever use them outside of space combat in very specific scenarios. So they've been spending lots of time trying to like find excuses to use it, really, and you really only ever use it in like these single player story like narrative things. Otherwise, you're not really railjacking.
Right.
There's like mechs that you can jump into. They are kind of limited use too. The thing that kind of connects all these places are all these like little content things, or all the mods and weapons and shit you can get from them.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
And a lot of them have materials you kind of have to go back and forth. They're doing better at making sure that these things get involved with each other in groups at the very least, so you're not doing something and then never coming back to it.
Right.
But it can be it's a balance, right? Because sometimes it's like what they're doing is this new weapon or whatever needs one piece of something from this old map you haven't been to in 10 years. Like that's kind of annoying, but like for what they've done in this last stuff, which is I guess you can kind of think of this game in arcs, of like narratively. In 1999 feels like the end of the arc we're in now, where basically the Tenno, a ship comes back from the void, almost like Event Horizon style, and everybody on it is like a void ghost. But some of them are like decent people, and there's also a connection to your character specifically that brings them back to the ship. But that ship is almost like a cork between the real world and the void. So you have to go back and forth between it and stop the void from breaking through the hole that in reality the ship is made. But there's lots of things that feed back to this place that are also related to the void kind of leaking through. So that ship expansion and then like kind of everything they've done since all are maybe in different places, but all speak back to this one thing. So all of the new content and materials and items you would need to get all require the same kind of stuff you would get from all three of these like new unique locations. So you're not just like abandoning it over time. People have been spending the last year and a half on the Zariman ship and then in Duviri and etc.
Okay, that's
so
cool.
they're doing better at like making sort of
making like stuff last longer,
making stuff last at least in chapters or in like sections, right?
Yeah, and I'm sure it's like that difficult thing, right? Of like speaking from experience as somebody who's played Destiny, like which is Destiny 2, which is pretty much ran it just as long as Warframe has in some regards. Like that has a very similar problem where sometimes you'll have content and like it's content you can like go back. Some of it's stuff you can go back to. Some of it they completely vault out of the game. Some stuff but like some stuff is like, is it worthwhile to go back to at this point because I've already gotten the stuff I need from it? And then like sometimes when they'll do like a seasonal storyline and you'll go back to a place and then it'll be like, oh, hey, remember this random small weird activity that you grinded for like 20 hours way back here a year ago? Now go do that again for a little bit. And it's like, wait, do I gotta do this? And I know like
same with Warframe.
Gotta do that? Like come on. Like,
and that's probably where they got it from, honestly. They probably played some Destiny or like they're doing it, so why not?
Yeah,
because they pull things that are old and like they come out of the vault every like once in a while.
Yeah.
They don't vault like story content though, do they? Or
so not really. It is so a lot more. They haven't vaulted anything recent story content wise. But like usually story content comes with a new frame, which comes with new weapons. They'll probably add a new frame based on like the last story content once or twice before the next story content. Or there's like usually maybe a small mission that introduces the next frame. So like, which is like tangentially related to all of the story content. Like the last frame that come out was Jade. Jade had a mission that kind of changed a lot of how you interact with maps and kind of add mobs that show up randomly that affect the map in a new way. But that's all Zariman related, basically. Now, in 3 years, they might vault Jade. I doubt they will. The protocol for what they vault is a little different nowadays. It's kind of just really old shit you just can't get anymore because they replaced their spot on like the loot charts with something newer.
I see. Okay.
But like, so if it's really just really old frames, you probably can't get anymore. Anything like in the past few years, you probably still can just grind out.
Sure.
And it's only prime stuff that's usually vaulted. So like,
yeah, and there's like the more exclusive-y like chase kind of things. Like
so like Mesa, for example, is a frame I just got recently. The regular Mesa, you can just grind for and get. Mesa Prime is vaulted, I believe. So I couldn't just grind for Mesa Prime.
Okay, interesting. So I guess what else was there at for 99? Like how much did they kind of show? Was there any other big features? I know like romance was like a thing, and then were there any other kind of like big standout things they really talked up about this expansion really? Or
so they really showed us from what it sounds like, the entirety of the intro mission when you first start up the 1999 kind of expansion or storyline. So they really hit home just how much like what they had said was this is a world where like the Y2K scare like kind of is coming true, like where computers and stuff are really messed up. There's this thing called techno rot. But they showed off basically kind of the new environment that, oh man, this is the 90s, and instant messenger. And like you said, Mike, the big things they touted was you'll be able to romance each of the members of the Hex, including Arthur. And also, and Jarrett can touch on what this all means, but there's a boy band in the game called Online, and basically they become liches, like infested liches that will torment you in the present in the Origin system. But they have this bop of a song that played a bunch, and that basically there's boy bands and romancing it through instant messenger, and you shoot normal guns.
Yeah, at least normal looking guns.
Yeah, and rocket launchers and stuff. That's what I got from it.
Yeah, what it really adds is this story, which includes a dating sim inside the story. Maybe some arcade games I think you can play also in isolation. You can bring what's called a Gemini skin, which is like all 6 members of the Hex, like we mentioned, kind of represent early versions, it seems, of 6 different frames that you can then use in Warframe proper as skins. So if I wanted to play my Excalibur as Arthur, I can like hit a button and I'll be playing as Arthur in my farming run instead of just regular Excalibur or something. In case I wanted farm and hear Ben Starr's voice, I guess.
Yeah.
There is the boy band specifically online. It exists as a recurring sort of game mode in Warframe called the Liches. They colloquially known as the Liches, but what they basically are like the adversary system from like the Mordor games, where certain factions will just kind of have particular soldiers or like important, like almost procedurally generated characters that just kind of haunt you. There are 3 factions of these so far that came from other story content. Kuva Liches is the first one. Kuva is like a sub-faction of the Grineer. Grineer are clone soldiers. Where the Kuva Lich will like find a planet you're on or one of the planets you've cleared and just like take it over. And anytime you do any missions in the solar system, they'll tax you. And their influence spreads until you do something about them, basically. Sisters of Parvos was another group, and they will like follow you around from planet to planet and just like jump into your shit. And these guys seem like people who will be haunting like parts of space, and you'll have to get in your railjack and like fly to stop them. Something that is pointed at in the first mission video that you can see on their website is that something happens to Arthur in the past that affects the present, and it involves these liches kind of infecting the present currently from the past. So Kuva Liches, the boy band online is like flying through space, infecting areas of space with speakers that are playing their song. It's like haunting the area, and you have to shoot the speakers to like reveal like an asteroid that is covered in disinfected that the infection pulls away, and it's a stadium, and you have to go into the stadium and hunt the particular boy band member that's haunting this part of space. So this would be a persistent end game thing that does fit into a format that has already existed, but with some seemingly clever difference.
Yeah, having like these more like, I guess like more named and like actual like enemies with like backgrounds. It sounds like I guess they're more like boss type enemies.
Yeah, these are like special sort of bosses. They're not exactly like world bosses because it's not like everybody can just show up and fight them, right?
Sure. But, yeah, right.
They are special. They'd have their own special tab on the menu, and there'd be a process to getting them. You'd have to like create like probably clear 3 or 4 missions to like break down their defenses to go get to them, and they have a unique reward usually.
Yeah, they have like the thing you're going to chase to probably unlock some other
It's like whatever this expansion thing is
right.
what you're going to chase for. Yeah,
for sure. Okay, yeah, neat. That's a cool idea. Like I'm kind of surprised, frankly, like hearing like you threw out that sort of like Mordor adversary mode and being like, oh yeah, like not a lot of like that would make sense for like almost some of these live games, and like I don't know if any other have really tried something at that scale where like Destiny's had a couple things, but they definitely were nowhere near like the idea of like having like a more proper adversary. But that sounds
this
interesting.
Particular one is clever. It's less Mordor in that like it kind of just pops up and like it's more random. Where this is like they're one of 5 members, but it's all like the pop sort of gimmick is also part of the narrative. Like
I see. Okay.
Infested is used literally. Like they are infested by a parasite that is one of the factions in the game that like is the alien monster faction. For example, they spread from planet to planet and consume everything around them. Change the behavior of sentient creatures. But their infestation, the way they spread it is through their music. A poppy, catchy tune that never leaves your head the first time you hear it.
Yeah, I may have listened to it like 5 times today.
They literally infest you from inside your from your brain outwards. Like it was a fun little twist on the thing.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, it's interesting. That's like a good twist on that. But yeah, I like anything else that like really stood out to you in their kind of showcase of this stuff. Like that stuff that sounds pretty interesting to me, at least so far. But I don't know. It's like, again, it is that like challenge to like try and jump into Warframe like now, for me still, where like this seems like, again, it seems like cool ideas for their unique, like they do for these expansions every time. But like, was there any kind of positioning, which, again, coming from like the Destiny coded pilled brain, like they always try and do something a little bit to be like, and if you're jumping into the game for the first time, this is the time. Like, do they try and do anything like that for this here, or were they just more just like, hey, it's Warframe?
Yes and no.
It's Warframe.
Like, you can get, they're giving away stuff, Saren Prime and a gun. Saren Prime is a very good Warframe, has been since it came out.
Okay.
So if you're struggling with like power, Saren Prime has power. Pretty easy to use too. So there's like a mechanical difficulty ease sort of situation there, but it's giving you a strong thing out the gate. Right. There's rumor that they're going to change the onboarding thing. They didn't talk about it in any real detail that I know of, Scott.
Yeah, so full disclosure, I guess, like Jarrett and I didn't pay we didn't take ourselves to Tennocon. Digital Extremes paid for flights and travel and hotel and everything, and we got to tour around. So just as full disclosure, but in a couple of our meetings with press, they did mention that they are. I even think they said shortly after Tennocon, they were working on something to really help with the onboarding process, because something that a lot of people brought up was, this 1999 looks really cool, but you have to go through 11 years worth of content before you can even access it. It's not like its own separate thing that you could access when you first get going if it looked interesting to you. So they did talk about that they're doing something with it, but not what that's going to be, what that'll look like. So it still remains to be seen.
Yeah.
And they attempted something like it last Tennocon, or last big expansion, with what's called the Viri Paradox, which is part of this Zariman sort of story arc happening, where the Viri Paradox is a separate like pocket dimension that you could enter at any time. And it's a roguelike version of Warframe, basically.
Gotcha.
That has an open world sort of exploration situation, and something called the cycle, where you pick a Warframe at random, weapons at random, and a group of 4 kind of just goes through like a playlist of the various different mission types, and that gets progressively harder. You build a meter by successfully going through the missions, and there's like checkpoints on the meter that unlock stuff. It's a great way to unlock frames if you haven't, because this is playing a very simple applied version of the game, and eventually you just unlock the things that are on this track. It's the only way to get what's called incarnans when you play the hard mode of it. Basically, incarnans are like a thing that turns basic weapons into like super duper weapons. So it's both a beginner and an end game run, depending on how you play it.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it might get you geared up quick, but what it doesn't do is get you through the story. You still have to go through the star chart to get to the story stuff. So it doesn't skip over like the literal like hours of content you have to do. It just gets you to a power level that it makes it a breeze to do. or like as easy as possible.
Right. It just makes
to
it
do,
say
but
like you could kind of get through all that stuff faster.
Right. It's still like
it's
hundreds of points on the map though. So
yeah.
So faster is only like, you know.
Yeah.
Relative.
Yeah, relative, right, for sure. Yeah, that's definitely that's it's something definitely talked about a lot in previous Helm to Tower podcasts when we talked about Destiny a lot. Like they both have like a lot of challenges with that kind of stuff. So like, it's not an easy thing to figure out, I'm sure, to just be like, hey, decades of content still being in the game to like do, but then having a like easy way to like get through all of it and do it and have it be like an inviting thing. You got to just kind of be in for it. But cool. Like, the stuff still sounds pretty neat. I mean, was it, again, any other last things that they like, did they kind of show anything else through this event, or was there like kind of anything else besides it? Because what we have so far, we had like, romance systems, like, kind of you guys saw like the intro stuff, a little bit of Soulframe. Was there like any kind of content that's like dropping now that people can go play, or is that anything crazy there? Or is it just more like, here's a new Warframe and that's kind of it?
So for a few days, at least during Tennocon and a few days after, I don't think they put a firm hard stop on it. If you log into Warframe, you can kind of tour the mall area from 1999 and kind of see and meet the members of the Hex. They're like in this weird alternate like reality kind of thing. So it's not like you can interact with them, but you can kind of walk around the little hub environment.
Get a vibe check.
I think that's the only thing that's going on like right now.
There is, for people who are playing and have already who already play, there is a merchant, like a timed merchant that comes every 2 weeks called Barrow Key Tier. He sells primed stuff. So mods are like the way you increase the power of your weapons and warframes, basically. They're the one to multiply your health, multiply your damage, blah, blah, blah. There are primed versions of many of those things, including, and there's also primed weapons and warframes. And he sells not a random, but a pre-selected collection of these things every 2 weeks. He's been around for the past couple of days and will be around for a few more days right now.
Okay.
So if you haven't looked, he is there. And I think he might have like a special selection of stuff too. That is for Tennocon. There's other content for people who play, like they have special cosmetics for 2 old frames that are going to be available for a limited time.
Okay.
Stuff like that. Nothing that's like, if you don't play, this is the new shit. Get into this right now. Nothing like that yet.
Right. Yeah.
Honestly, the biggest mechanical thing they did. This is like, mechanically, this seems pretty straightforward. Actually, maybe more straightforward than I thought. This would be the last big thing they did was way more maybe mechanically ambitious, while this one seems way more narratively ambitious, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah, like you said, like it's cool. It's cool for them to like be able to be like just trying stuff, because that's what they're at. That's where they're at with that game, because it's been going for so long. Like, honestly, I think like that's like a similar thing I kind of would like to see from Destiny, is them to like try crazier stuff now that they've kind of ended their saga that they were on with Final Shape, and now they've hit it. Now we're in these like episodic things, and they are not really like diverging away from like the very ebb and flow of hopping into Destiny and doing your weekly stuff or whatever. So hearing that like Warframe is like trying more interesting things is cool to hear. So,
and like Warframe has kind of a history with trying things in the community, and like outside of it, it's known. People say that Warframe is going for the record of how many tags it can get on Steam.
Okay, yeah,
because it does a little bit of a lot of shit.
Right.
Like I said, it has like a skateboard mini game in it. There's a character creation sort of thing that happens as part of like the biggest twist in the game, like right in the middle of it. There's like Batman mode detective shit. You can capture and raise animals like Pokemon. There's a fighting game in there somewhere if you're willing to look for it. There's a whole ass musical instrument you can just learn to play.
Yeah. I've heard about and
there's-
there's like the musical like Warframe where you can like put your own music into.
Yeah,
them
there's
or
a whole
something.
musical Warframe that
Yeah,
has like
so I
a
heard about
stereo
that
that follows
one.
it around.
It's crazy.
There are musicals. Like there's like a section of that game that's just like a musical. Like it's fucking insane. This game is insane.
Yeah, that sounds pretty insane. Well, cool. Like, you know, unless there's like any other big things from Tennocon, it sounded like you both had a good time overall, you'd say.
No, I don't think so. Had a good time. Thank you, DE, for flying us out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And good time.
Yeah.
Good to see folks.
For sure. And do you guys have like, are you guys posting content anywhere else coverage wise you want to plug or?
It's looking like my content's going to end up on IP.
Nice.
So coming soon.
So excellent. So check our main channel. But yeah, thanks Jarrett. Thanks Scott.
Yeah,
We're
and
stopping.
my stuff will be I got some stuff going on over at RPG site. I'll be posting.
Nice.
So and maybe
Excellent.
and probably something a little over on IP too, just for shits and giggles.
Yeah, so feel free folks to check that out. Scott, Jarrett, thanks for joining me, for telling me a little bit about Warframe. Future content here on Helm to Tower. I don't know if we'll really do too much Warframe, but maybe, you know, you guys voted for it. I put a community thing since that's happened since the last video on here. I'll just throw it here at the end. You voted about getting more streaming on the channel, so I'm gonna look into that and figure out better timing. So maybe that's where I can figure that out and be like, hey, Jarrett, show me what the fuck's going on in this game. Yeah. Maybe we'll figure something like that in the future. Nothing like, you know, anytime super soon, but, you know, we're going to figure it out. But thanks everybody for watching, as always, hanging here on Helm Tower. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Laters.